In October 1307, something strange happened across the Kingdom of France. At dawn, royal officers knocked on the doors of the most famous knights in Christendom. By nightfall, many of those knights were in chains. They were the Knights Templar. For almost 200 years they had fought for the church, guarded pilgrims, and handled money for kings and popes. Suddenly they were prisoners, accused of heresy and terrible secret crimes. A few years later, the Pope dissolved their order completely. On paper, it looks like the church turned on its own warrior monks. So why did the Vatican destroy the Templars? To understand that, we need to see who the Templars really were at their peak. The order began after the First Crusade. Around 1119, a small group of knights in Jerusalem offered to protect Christian pilgrims traveling on dangerous roads. They took vows like monks, but they fought like soldiers. They became the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, named after their first headquarters near the Temple Mount. At first, they really were poor. They depended on donations and lived simply. But as their reputation grew, European nobles started giving them land, rights, and money. By the mid-11th century, the popes saw their value. The Templars answered directly to the Pope, not to local bishops or kings. That gave them unusual independence. They could cross borders, move troops, and manage resources without asking permission from secular rulers. Over time, they built a network of estates and commanderies from England to the Holy Land. Some provided food and equipment for Crusader armies. Others served as financial hubs. This is where their story shifts from simple warrior monks to something much more complicated. Because the Templars were trusted, people began depositing money and valuables with them. A noble could leave gold with the Templars in France and receive a document he could redeem in the East. That meant he did not have to travel with chests of coins and a small army of guards. The Templars became a kind of early international bank. They held funds for kings, nobles, and churches. They lent money. They managed estates. They even helped collect taxes at times. They were not the only ones doing this, but they were among the most visible. Their white mantles with red crosses created a strong brand. Everyone knew who they were. By the late 1200s, though, the world around them had changed. The Crusader states in the Holy Land were collapsing. In 1291, the last major Christian stronghold, Acre, fell. The Templars were forced to move their headquarters to Cyprus. They still existed, but their original mission in the Holy Land was basically gone. They now looked like a very rich, very independent organization, with fewer obvious military victories to justify their power. At the same time, monarchs in Europe were getting stronger and more ambitious. That combination set up a conflict. The most important ruler in this story is King Philip IV of France, often called Philip the Fair. His nickname refers to his appearance, not his character. He fought expensive wars, argued with the church over taxes and authority, and desperately needed money. He had already clashed with a previous pope, Boniface VIII. By the time Clement V became pope, Philip had learned how to pressure the papacy. Clement was French, spent much of his time under French influence, and moved the papal court to Avignon a few years later. That political reality shaped his choices. Philip owed the Templars a lot of money. At the same time, he could see that they controlled valuable land and had a reputation for loyalty to the Pope rather than to any king. From a royal point of view, that combination was dangerous. A rich, semi-independent military order with its own internal chain of command, answering to a pope who might one day oppose France again, was a potential problem. If Philip could break the order, seize its assets, and weaken papal independence in the process, he would solve several problems at once. In 1307, he made his move. On Friday, October 13th, under secret orders, officials across France arrested Templars almost simultaneously. The charges were shocking. They were accused of denying Christ, spitting on the cross, worshipping a mysterious idol, and committing immoral acts during their initiation rituals. These accusations hit at the core of medieval religious life. Most ordinary people had never seen what happened inside Templar meetings. The idea that these famous knights might be hiding dark practices inside their chapter houses gave the charges extra power. Many of the confessions used to support these accusations came under torture or the threat of it. Under painful questioning, some Templars admitted to strange rituals, or at least to minor irregularities. Others denied everything and were punished for it. Once those confessions existed on paper, it became much harder for the Pope to simply dismiss the charges. Even if he believed Philip had political motives, he could not ignore piles of supposed testimony about heresy inside a major religious order. At first, the Pope was not pleased that Philip had acted without him. Clement V tried to assert control by ordering that the arrests should be handled under church authority, but the damage was already done. Public opinion had been hit with a wave of shocking stories. The king controlled many of the prisoners and their records. If Clement fully defended the Templars, he risked looking like he was protecting heretics. He also risked another deep conflict with the French crown, at a time when the papacy was already weak and vulnerable. This is where the Vatican's position becomes clear. The Pope was supposed to be the highest spiritual authority. He had to be seen as defending the faith and dealing with heresy. At the same time, he was operating in a world where kings had armies and could pressure or even kidnap popes, as had nearly happened before. Clement tried to balance these forces. He opened church-led investigations. He called for councils. He listened to testimony from Templars who claimed the order was innocent. But Philip kept pushing, publicly and privately, for a firm condemnation. During the Council of Vienne, held from 1311 to 1312, bishops and cardinals gathered to decide the order's fate. The evidence was mixed. In some regions, especially outside France, Templars were cleared or found guilty only of minor issues. In others, their confessions under torture painted a darker picture. Instead of issuing a final judgment that declared the order formally guilty or innocent of heresy, Clement chose a different path. He dissolved the order by papal decree, citing scandal and the need to protect the Church's reputation. This decision mattered. By dissolving the order, the Pope effectively destroyed its legal existence. There would be no more Templar leadership, no more official houses, no more recognized Templar knights. That satisfied one of Philip's goals. The order that had served the papacy for 2 centuries was gone. The Pope also ordered that much of the Templars' property should be transferred to another military order, the Hospitallers. On paper, that kept church control over the assets. In practice, local rulers, especially in France, found ways to keep a share of the wealth, or at least tighten their grip on it. So did the Vatican destroy the Templars? The story is more complex than a simple act of betrayal from Rome. The drive to break the order began with Philip IV and his ministers. They saw an opportunity to remove a creditor, seize assets, and show the king's power over spiritual matters. But the Vatican had a choice about how to respond. Clement could have taken a strong stand, defended the order, and risked open conflict with France. Instead, he chose a path that sacrificed the Templars to preserve the papacy's fragile position. From the Vatican's point of view, several concerns came together. First, the charges, even if exaggerated or extracted under torture, created massive scandal. A major religious order accused of mocking Christ and hiding idols was a nightmare for church credibility. Second, the political balance was bad. The Pope was already under heavy French influence. He had limited support for a full confrontation with Philip. Third, the practical need to keep the wider church stable pushed him toward a solution that would close the case rather than drag it out for years. The result has shaped Templar legend ever since. With the order dissolved and many documents controlled by royal or church authorities, room opened for speculation. Over time, stories grew about hidden treasure, secret teachings, surviving Templar lines, and curses. One famous legend says that the last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, cursed the Pope and the King as he died at the stake, calling them to judgment before God. Both men did die within a short time, which kept the story alive. Historians debate the details, but the image of a wronged master and a corrupt system stuck. Modern research, however, shows a mix of real problems and manufactured ones. It is possible that some Templars cut corners in their rituals or used rough initiation practices. Large organizations often drift from their ideals over time, but the most extreme charges, like secret idol worship, look more like standard heresy accusations of the period than like solid evidence. In many places outside France, church investigators could not confirm the worst accusations. That is one reason the Pope stopped short of formally condemning the order as heretical in doctrine, even as he shut it down. Looking back, the destruction of the Templars tells us more about church and state than about mysterious rituals. It shows how a king could weaponize charges of heresy to solve financial and political problems. It shows how a pope, caught between ideal authority and real-world pressure, might choose survival over justice for one order. It also shows how public reputation can matter as much as truth. Once the image of corrupt Templars spread, it became almost impossible to restore the order's honor in the eyes of ordinary people. Today, when we ask why the Vatican destroyed the Knights Templar, the answer is not a single secret document or hidden conspiracy. It is a chain of pressures, a powerful king in debt, a rich and independent order whose original mission had faded, a frightened and politically weak papacy, a society where accusations of heresy were deadly, even when the evidence was flawed. Put those pieces together, and the end of the Templars becomes less of a mystery and more of a harsh political decision. The irony is that the Church later allowed more nuanced views of the Templars' fate. While the order was never restored, later writers and some church voices admitted that many of the charges were exaggerated and that the trials were unjust by modern standards. That quiet shift came too late to help the knights themselves. But it explains why, centuries later, we still talk about them. The memory of a loyal order, used and then discarded, continues to fascinate people who look at the relationship between faith, money, and power. So when you picture the moment the Vatican dissolved the Templars, imagine not just a simple act of betrayal, but a cornered institution making a choice. It chose to protect its own authority and its fragile peace with kings by sacrificing the very order that had once symbolized its reach across continents. That choice ended the Templars' story as an official order. It also guaranteed that the questions around their fall would never really go away.